Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Down Syndrome Center podcast. As always, I am your host, Dr. Kishore Volodi, and so excited to have a podcast topic that we've touched on in the past, and we'll say that during the podcast as we go through, where you might find some prior information we've talked about on this topic. But we're going to be talking about Hirschsprung disease, but from a more of a parent and caregiver perspective, and resources that are out there for parents that actually I was just made known about myself. So I thought we should definitely have the folks from Reach, which we'll be talking about today on the podcast. But before we get too far into it, I'd love our speakers to be able to introduce yourselves. Ashley and Isabel, if you want to introduce yourselves, we'll start with you, Ashley, and then Isabel will have you go next.
Okay. Hi, I'm Ashley Matthews, and I am a mama to a 6-year-old son named Milo. He has Down syndrome and Hirschsprung's, and I am an ambassador for Reach.
Wonderful. And Isabel?
And I'm Isabelles Schnadig. I'm a mother of 19-year-old Adrian, who has also Down syndrome and Hirschsprung. I'm also the co-founder of Reach.
Wonderful. And we'll be definitely talking about Reach more as we go through the podcast so folks know what it is and how they can access the resources. But before we get too far into the podcast, I think it would be helpful for our listeners just to get a little bit of an update. You know, we've talked about Hirschsprung disease on the podcast before, but from your perspective, like, what is it? What is Hirschsprung disease?
I'll start.
Do you want me to start, Ashley?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
So Hirschsprung disease, it's a rare disease that happens to one child every 5,000 births. And it's basically the dysfunction of the colon, where there's the absence of ganglion cell in the colon, which means that the colon cannot remove the poop inside of it cannot evacuate. So it usually needs surgery. The disease can affect the whole colon or part of the colon, and that determines the kind of surgery that the kid is going to need. Aside to the surgery, there is a recovery that is long, and also a condition that goes with it, which means that the kids can have a hard time adjusting to certain food, being allergic to certain food, and it's something that you observe as a child grow. So it's not a straight line.
Mm-hmm.
It's a complex situation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ashley, what do you think? What's your perspective?
Very much so. It's so individual. And that's the thing that has really struck me, because out of all the groups and boards and research that I've done, it seems like no two are the same. And it's just because, it just depends on how many ganglion cells are missing. It depends on if there's food aversions or not. My son has food aversions, so he only eats about 12 different things. And, if he were able to eat more whole foods, then his gut may be healthier, so it kind of depends on, what they're able to do. Down syndrome has a really big impact on Hirschsprung's as well. And I know that's what we're talking about, but my son had short segment and had a 11-hour surgery. No, 7.5-hour surgery when he was 11 days old. And so that was really intense and scary. And we manage his bowel movements with enemas every other day. And we do anal irrigations as well with the Navina smart system. And we just keep him as cleared out as we can, because it can become an emergency so fast.
Yeah.
Like shockingly fast. And that's one thing that we've, come to realize, that Down syndrome is actually secondary to Hirschsprung's, in the way of the things that we have to do and what it necessitates.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you're trying to say, if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying like the amount of effort it takes to keep things functioning for his colon intestinal tract is more than you would have expected just with Down syndrome alone. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
You would just have to be aware of so much all the time.
Yeah. What are some of as parents, what are some of the unique features that you've seen? Obviously, you've probably been involved or been around families who have had their child has had Hirschsprung disease but doesn't have Down syndrome. Like, what are some of the things that you've found as kind of unique to when you get the combination of both Down syndrome and Hirschsprung disease? Isabel, we'll start with you.
Yes, so the problem with having both is because the kids is usually not able to communicate what is going on. So you have to do a lot of guessing. And you have to really trust your instinct as a parents that to know what you have to do next. And I think what Ashley said about sometimes, how things can develop so quickly and become an emergency, it's really always in your vision field to just assess that. We learned with Adrian when he was little that whenever he doesn't go to the bathroom, we have to give him an irrigation. Because in the past, when he was a very little baby, and we would not do that, we ended up at the emergency room because he was like super uncomfortable, and he had developed like some horrible gas and cramp, and the only way to relieve that was to give him irrigation. So we did that early on, and we are learning that. We have learned that and to master the skill.
And now, as parents who've you've been doing that all your life, that terminology would make sense. But I'm thinking about our families who are listening to the podcast who've never had to do what's called an irrigation. Like, what is that, Isabel? What do you have to do?
So it's basically different than an enema. In irrigation, you kind of put a catheter in the anal part of the body, and then you insert a syringe full of saline solution. Then you just remove the saline solution from the catheter, and you extract some usually some feces. I mean some poop.
Yeah.
And that really helps. For Adrian, it's like something that start a process of him going to the bathroom on his own.
Okay.
So we sometimes don't have to give him that much, and then he would just go. But it's like it was so key when he was little, and sometimes it's key. It's just something I have to do even now. He's 19 years old.
And both of you have mentioned kind of emergency situations. Ashley, do you want to just fill our audience in, like, what are some of the emergency things that you're concerned about that you would be watching for your son?
Yeah, so enterocolitis is the number one, I think. Impaction. The hardest thing for Milo is he gets distended really easily, and he can't pass gas. And so that causes the most amount of, discomfort and pain. Really, he's just, when he can't pass it, he's just in terrible pain. And so we have to do a lot of intervention to help him do that. And these irrigations they're kind of intense. It's like the catheter is like 12 inches long or so. And, no child wants to do this. It's a very invasive, Hirschsprung's is a very invasive disease. And I think the hardest thing for us with him having Down syndrome is making sure he understands why we're doing this in the first place. And I don't know, I think he understands in a way of he's never known anything different, but he doesn't want to be doing any of this anymore. He's so tired of it. And I think it's just, it's such a consistent thing for us that if he has an enema, let's say emergency wise, if he has 2 or 3 enemas in a row that don't look right, don't smell right, it's a whole, like, I look at stool now as a very diagnostic type way. If it's really irregular, and if he's having a really hard time getting it out, if he throws up while he's trying to push at the same time, typically there's something else going on. And the irrigations for us, because he's 6 and very strong and just doesn't want to do those in particular, we need extra hands. So we've had to go to the emergency department for that. We've had to go see specialists for that, have like 3 people help hold him down type of thing. So that's why we started using the Navina smart irrigation system because it's pressurized and the catheter doesn't go up into the colon as far, but there's a balloon. And so the water just kind of fills up as far as it can go. And then it's a lot more gentle process to try to clear everything out. But for us, for the most part, enemas do the trick. Like a fleet adult saline enema is what we use every other day. And then we use the Navina like every other week or so, just to make sure he's good and cleared out.
I mean, what you both are describing, of course, is to you all is going to be, obviously what you have known and things that you've had to do for many, many years. For many of our listeners, this is all going to be, new and foreign. And I think that one of the things that you've also described too is just kind of that unique interplay between Down syndrome and having Hirschsprung disease at the same time. And then the fact that you as parents are doing things that most parents will never have to do for their child. And maybe a nurse might do those things in their job, but in terms of doing these types of things at home, is very unique to you all. And for our listeners who want to get more information about Hirschsprung disease and a medical topic that we had discussed with Dr. Austin, that was back in December of 2022. That's podcast number 146. You can go back and listen to it. But as I listen to you both, and I think, boy, there are probably so many families out there. I know because when I take care of the families that have a child with Down syndrome and Hirschsprung disease, there can be almost like an isolation feel because Hirschsprung is pretty rare. And when you combine that with also having Down syndrome at the same time, the rarity goes up. And so families can feel pretty alone, pretty isolated. And so I love what you guys are doing. I don't know who wants to talk about first, what is Reach? Maybe you, Isabel, if you don't mind. Like what caused you to want to create Reach and what is Reach?
So when Adrian was born, which was 19 years ago, we felt extremely alone.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I was thinking along those years of loneliness was to create a place where I could meet other parents and reach out and exchange, experiences. And we started doing that. Like we started meeting with the Adrian's doctors, and then we would have dinner and talk about potentially starting a foundation. And we started the foundation in 2011. We created the foundation. And we have now we have 3 doctors and then 4 parents as a board member. We have being able to really expand in terms of reaching out in the world. We have another entity that is based in Canada, who is also a board member. And then we created this symposium. We created a grant that we give once a year for 12 years now. And we have a fellowship program where we train when doctors come and get to see the best practice in helping with Hirschsprung. So that's the idea. It was just to educate, to make the disease more known, and then to have people reach out. And then I think the next thing we would like to do ideally is to create a support group where we have parents talking around the table and feel like they have a place where they can be sad or be happy or all of that together.
What is it that REACH stands for? What is that acronym?
So REACH means research, education, and advocacy. It used to be awareness, but now it's advocacy for children with Hirschsprung disease.
Okay, so not specifically for kids with Down syndrome, but just Hirschsprung disease in general, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so a year ago, Ashley and I, we started this subgroup in REACH, which is called Hirschsprung plus Down syndrome. And there is actually a special place within the website where you can click and then you go to our little section, and then you find stories with children like Milo and Adrian and others, and also resources, a lot of information. Yes.
So Ashley, as a parent, I think ambassador, I think was the title that you gave us. What is your role, and if you're a parent listening to this podcast who has a child with both Down syndrome and Hirschsprung disease, like what would be your role in that situation?
So when we get a contact from any sort of parent from the website or any other, means from just the regular HD website, they'll send an email, and if they have specific questions or they're just, looking for extra information or support, then they can send that email over to me, and I can reach out to them and help answer anything that I may be able to help with. So that's kind of how I am working as an ambassador. And then I talk about Hirschsprung's and Down syndrome and other means on my Instagram and in Facebook groups as well, trying to just create more awareness about what's out there and what's available, because this all kind of came about because I realized there wasn't really a resource online for both. They live in silos. And we went through, speaking of the emergencies, we went through an atypical reaction to anal Botox procedure, which is very common for Hirschsprung's, not the atypical reaction, but trying Botox as a means of treatment. And he ended up having the worst atypical, it wasn't a rash, it was like chemical burn type of thing for 6 weeks because he couldn't stop stooling. And so it was just a constant thing. He went from not being able to poop to not being able to stop. And it was a really devastating experience. And when we would go to the emergency room or we go to a specialist, they know some about Down syndrome, and maybe some people would know a little bit about Hirschsprung's, but never the two together. And so I was searching. I'm like, surely there's got to be other people that have information about these two, like really life-changing diagnoses together. And there really wasn't. And so I found Reach and then contacted Isabel and Eric, and they were like, yeah, we need to do this. Let's do this. So we worked on it for about a year. And we're really proud of it. And I'm glad that I can send people that I know that have both. And it's not just Hirschsprung's too. There's a lot of kids with Down syndrome that have just GI issues in general. So it's a really good resource for that as well.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think definitely I'll include the website for Reach in the show notes, and if there's any other resources that you guys want me to include in there, just let me know, and I can include that in our show notes as well. Isabel, what are you going to show us here?
So I'm going to show you the book that
Okay.
also I created for the website and for those people with those two conditions. It's called My Little Brother is a Trooper: The Story of a Child with a Dual Diagnosis, Down syndrome and Hirschsprung disease. And so you have in that book, you have a part for the children, I mean, mostly the sibling, to understand what's going on with their little brother.
Yeah.
And then you have a big part for the caregiver and, adult and family,
That's
explaining
wonderful.
a lot of the, so it's available on the website, and, it's highly
awesome.
recommended.
Oh, great. Okay, I will definitely include that as well. Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay. Well, I feel like, boy, this is a fantastic organization that you have put together and continue to grow. I think you said since 2011. It's amazing. And I think a lot of folks who are listening to this podcast will hopefully be able to connect with you all and perhaps not feel so isolated and alone as they navigate both diagnoses as they move forward. But before we close the podcast, is there anything else that you wanted to make sure we talked about before we end the recording today?
I'd like to give go ahead, Isabel.
No, go ahead, Ashley. Go ahead.
I just wanted to give a shout out to, not a shout out, but when the impact of common illnesses for kids with Down syndrome is one thing, but when there's Hirschsprung's involved, someone told me very early on, I saw it on one of the boards. It was like, if your child has a fever, do an enema. If they are fussy, do an enema. If they like anything that doesn't even maybe seem like it could be related, it probably is. And that has stuck with me, and we go by that. And it typically is exactly that. And so once we get him back in a good regular place, then he's better. Yeah. So I would give that advice to anyone. And I also did a blog post of all the rash tips that I lived by through those 6 weeks of terror. And I've tried to put that out wherever I can as well, because it just depends on the type of rash and, you know, what you got going on. And being with wound care specialists really helped us to know what to do. And the rash is a really big common thing for Hirschsprungs, whether you have Down syndrome or not. When you have a reversal for your pull through, you know, a lot of kids have a stoma and, or, you know, a colostomy bag, and when they do the reversal for the pull through, then that area is just not used to having stool come through it. And so typically it's a lot, there's a big rash. So that's one of the biggest things I think on the boards that people talk about is like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? But there's a ton of other complications as well that can come up. And it can be really challenging. So I think the support group is really helpful, and people just reach out as much as they can. If it's Hirschsprungs, just Hirschsprungs, or Hirschsprungs and Down syndrome, because everything is a lot.
Yeah. Thank you, Ashley, for sharing that. Isabel, you were going to say something as well?
No, I wanted to say that, first of all, you know, the road can seem very long sometimes. It's just feel like there is something that comes out and then there's something else, and it's always, you know, never ending, whatever. What I would recommend people is to, I mean, we have access to a really amazing care here in Boston, and we have access to a Down syndrome clinic with a specialist, and it's almost like he's acting as a guide. We go once a year, and the doctor would point out potential things we have to look for. And at first I used to be reluctant to do that, because it was after we had to go through so many things with Hirschsprung, and I felt like I cannot deal with another condition, another diagnosis. But now I feel like it's so important to do that, because then you anticipate, you get ready. Like, there was something about Adrian, and I'm not saying it applies to all the kids with Down syndrome, but he had sleep apnea, and we didn't want to hear that. And, you know, it was like another thing, and then putting the mask on when he's sleeping. Now it's like a piece of cake. And then now he has something else, but it's just like, it prepares you. It gives you access to someone who knows best. And then you just follow the guidance. And then that way, you know what potentially to expect, and then how to take care the best possible you can do with your child. Because that's what's important at the end. You know.
Definitely. And you know, I think Down syndrome centers are unfortunately rare across the country, but if you have one near to you, I definitely would agree that would be something that we would support. And I'm saying that somewhat biased myself, being the person who runs one here in Pittsburgh. But yes, it's definitely something. And all of us who run these centers across the country, we get together once a year and we share information with each other. And so getting the most up-to-date information is going to be something that a Down syndrome center would be able to provide for you as well. So yeah, thank you for that shout out there as well, Isabel. So yeah, Ashley, you have something you want to add?
How often do you have individuals with Down syndrome come in and have both diagnoses? Is that all fairly often for you?
I mean, just like you guys have described, I mean, rare is something that, you know, Hirschsprung in general, but we know it happens at a higher frequency in people with Down syndrome, but it's still a rare condition when you take even the two together. We do have several families that we follow, and I think universally I hear what I'm hearing from you both as well, which is many times they can feel somewhat disconnected from both communities. The Hirschsprung community doesn't really fit with them, and the Down syndrome community doesn't really fit with them because they're dealing with different things. You know, toilet training takes a little bit longer, and as you know, and sometimes it can be very hard for people who have had Down syndrome and Hirschsprung to achieve continence. And now what do you do with your child who's 12, 13, 14 years old and still not continent? All these questions that come up that, boy, I wish we had a group like yours that I'm so glad to know about, where they can reach out and find out, hey, we're not alone. And I think that's what's so cool about what you guys are doing. Yeah.
There's one more tidbit I've thought of that I didn't realize until way later, is that because of Down syndrome and hypotonia, you know, all the muscles are relaxed, and that also includes the colon. And so that's something that I didn't quite piece together until later, that the motility of his colon, even without Hirschsprung's, is going to be slower. And so the diet and exercise and, eating things that have like good fat in it, oils, is helpful for making things move a little bit smoother.
Yeah.
But that was one part where I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. And, he ends up having to be put under, unfortunately, a lot more often. And one time they said to me, it's not when he goes to sleep, everything gets put to sleep. So it takes a little while for everything to come back online. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it.
And the ability for that colon to distend with stool, whether or not they have Hirschsprung in people with Down syndrome, is pretty impressive that they can hold back so much that it's an impressive amount of stool them sometimes. Isabel, you wanted to add something as well.
Yes, I definitely forgot,
Yeah.
but it's very, very important that dehydration is number one. It's something we didn't learn right away. When Adrian was little and he stopped breastfeeding, that's when the problem started with hydration. And he had a hard time swallowing, so we had to spoon feed him the water, like basically. Very recently, he's been able to do the straw, but that's it. And I highly recommend you guys to really hydrate your kids as much as possible. I mean, he has the equivalent of like 5 bottles a day, like the equivalent of 1 bottle of Pedialyte plus 4 other bottles of water. And that's help him getting hydrated and also being able to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. Great
I wish I
advice.
could get Milo to drink more water. We try all day long. That's
Yeah.
one thing that stresses me out. We put electrolytes in it, and he drinks Cape Farms milk, and it's a meal replacement type of milk, and he loves that and he sucks that down. But water, I'm like, take a sip. Okay, 2 more. Take a
Yeah.
sip.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Well,
is.
thank you both for coming on the podcast and sharing your experiences and sharing about this wonderful organization. Like I said, I'll put that information into the show notes. I really appreciate you both coming on today. So thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you for
much,
having us.
Doctor. Thank you.
Yeah. And to our listeners, thank you guys for always being so great at sending out emails if there are topics that you want us to cover or things that you think would be helpful for us to have on the podcast. In fact, the reason I was connected here to Reach was through a doctor who had been at a medical conference, I think, and ran into you guys at the medical conference, and they said, "Hey, you should have these guys on the podcast." Like, we love those kinds of emails. So send that to Down Syndrome Center at chp.edu. And we do read each and every one of those emails and try to help out with getting topics for the podcast that way. And if you'd like to join us in the work that we do here at the center, including this podcast, you can go to givetochildrens.org/Down Syndrome Center. But until next time, bye-bye.
you.